A grease-stained mechanic named Grayson Holt came out of a filthy old pickup that had slid onto the asphalt, and everyone chuckled. No one had anticipated that he would even be asked to inspect or service the private plane of a billionaire, much less fix it. One woman stood by silently as executives made fun of him from behind glass, beautiful Sienna Lockwood, who owns the plane. Just a few moments from now, she'd stride out onto the runway, halt the show, and pose the one question that would shock the globe. Just so we know where you're watching from, hit that like button and leave a comment. With your help, we can bring you stories with more impact. All right, then let us get started. A grease-stained mechanic named Grayson Holt came out of a filthy old pickup that had slid onto the asphalt, and everyone chuckled. No one had anticipated that he would even be asked to inspect or service the private plane of a billionaire, much less fix it. One woman stood by silently as executives made fun of him from behind glass, beautiful Sienna Lockwood, who owns the plane. Just a few moments from now, she'd stride out onto the runway, halt the show, and pose the one question that would shock the globe. At 6:47 a.m., about the time Clayton touched down at Clearwater International Airport, the wind gnawed at his faded flannel as the sky remained scarred from daybreak. The sound of his boots hitting the pavement was audible even above the faraway rumble of engines. Just before dawn, he had gotten the urgent call. Aircraft disaster. Very important, lacking specifics. Missing background information. I only need an address and a guarantee of immediate payment. Men in navy suits, shiny shoes and luxury coats encircled the private jet, which stood out like a silver beast in the distance. As Clayton drew near, they looked up for an instant before getting back to laughing. Both of them couldn't help but burst into laughter as one of them bent down and muttered something. For some reason, Clayton paid them no mind. He was familiar with their kind, a genius in the boardroom who knows nothing about computers. The plane itself was crucial. The stakes were really high. Opening the engine panel, he froze after dropping his tools next to the jet. His heart almost skipped a beat at what he witnessed. There was a crack in the fuel line, melted, not merely fractured. There was insulation loss, clamp corrosion, and a fuel leak perilously near the ignition coil. Everyone who had even a finger in this should have been immediately barred from flying. It only took a single spark for this aircraft to explode in mid-air. Time was of the essence, and Clayton knew it. Since he was alone, had no one to help him, and had little time to spare. He rolled up his sleeves and dug in. Years of engine repair in barns, on roads, and in the blistering Carolina sun gave him sure fingers. Employees at the airport stared with disbelief. Some were caught filming using their mobile devices. Their criticism was like a heat wave on his back, yet he persisted nonetheless. There was Sienna Lockwood observing everything from inside the terminal. As her employees made fun of her, she remained silent. The CEO was also a member of aviation's royal family. She expanded Carter Skytech, which her father had started from the ground up into an empire. Planes were familiar to her. After flying, building, and racing them, she was taken aback by what she witnessed outdoors. Leaning forward, she narrowed her eyes through the glass. This guy appeared to be a surgeon, slippy hands, ripped clothes and all. Who was he? For what reason did no one else notice what her pilots had overlooked? But him. Next, the lights on board. The plane began to dim. Like a heartbeat, the machine's quiet hum reverberated through it. At last, it came to life. Her heart raced. She rose carefully to her feet, maintaining eye contact with the man outside. No one else noticed a mechanic. What she perceived was quite different, and in the span of 3 short minutes, she would make an irrevocable impact on their lives by walking down the runway. Laughter ceased as soon as the plane roared to life again. As the humming became more consistent, the smug smiles of the executives behind the glass disappeared, and they stared in horrified silence. "That was supposed to take hours," someone murmured. Clayton, however, had previously shut the engine panel. He refrained from reveling. He refrained from taking pride. In preparation for his departure, he used an old cloth to wipe his hands, placed his tool bag over his shoulder, and walked away. The door to the private plane opened at that moment. As they came crashing down the steps, resounded like thunder on the deserted asphalt. The metal steps were brushed by a pair of shoes, sleek black and imposing, with the grace of a princess. Sienna Lockwood made her way down the staircase, but there was mystery in her gaze. The expression on her face betrayed her inexperienced desire for what she wanted. A keen, purposeful and unyielding interest was displayed here. When Clayton noticed that she was approaching him, he halted in his tracks, with her hair pulled back and her stride exuding confidence. She wore a well-tailored navy suit adorned with golden buttons. The suit-clad men working behind her were visibly uneasy with each stride she took. She proceeded to go straight past them, the engineers who had gone silent, and the employees who had been laughing only moments before. The entire world appeared to be on edge as she approached the man who was drenched in motor grease. "It was mended by you," she whispered. Clayton drew a bow. "Indeed, ma'am, you have saved the number. The engine was damaged beyond repair, according to my pilot. According to him, we should put it on ice for a week." Despite the fuel line melting, he failed to notice it. While gently wiping dust from his shirt, Clayton calmly stated that it was almost touching the ignition coil. Instead of glaring at him, she narrowed her eyes in realization. "You could have just left. I will not flee from potential fire dangers." An eerie stillness. After that, Delaney grinned, and it wasn't the insincere type that you see in boardrooms. It was modest, forthright, and shocking to everyone who were onlookers. "Could you tell me my name?" "Excuse me," she inquired. "Carter? Skytex, Sienna Lockwood." "Yes. Your level of amazement is low. No, I am not seeking admiration. Issues will be resolved by me." Before turning to her workers, Delaney observed him. "Enter all of you, right now," and nobody was willing to speak out. Behind them, the doors of the terminal slammed shut. There were now merely the two of them on the asphalt. "I have spent my entire life surrounded by men who talk big but do little," she said, her voice now gentler. "Out of everyone who did the opposite, you were the first." Clayton merely nodded. Working was all I was doing, as if deciding on a course of action that might change everything. Delaney inhaled deeply. After taking in her surroundings, she turned her gaze back to the man who had rescued her plane, and by extension, her life. She advanced a little further. She spoke carefully and asked, "What would you do if someone as crazy as me asked you something absolutely outrageous?" Clayton wasn't moving. "Well, it's subjective. What the fuck is it possible that I may propose to you?" Neither of them said a word for a while. Whispers of wind swept across the runway. Clayton, who was still sporting his battered trousers, fuel-stained boots, and grease-blackened fingers, bore the expression of a guy with nothing to lose and everything to win as he watched a bird take flight from a nearby pole. Clayton remained silent. Unfazed, he continued. As if attempting to decipher the underlying query, he remained motionless, his gaze fixed on hers. The majority of guys would have fumbled for words, pretended not to care, or taken it as a joke. Not Clayton, though. For far too long, he had persevered in repairing what others had given up. On this was not background noise. He was a man of discernment. As time passed, Delaney did nothing. Even she seemed startled by the words. Her countenance was unintelligible, but her breathing was irregular. Although she was not accustomed to standing still, she did it in the hopes that the man standing before her would not view her as a punchline. Clayton used the back of his hand to dab the perspiration from his forehead. "I am completely unknown to you, and that is the reason I am inquiring." His brow arched slightly. "Please return." With a rhythmic click of her heels on the concrete, Delaney advanced. "The number of times that suit-clad men who claimed to love me because they memorized my net worth is 23, yet you," she said, pausing as her voice quivered, You carried a wrench into this horror, rescued my jet, put your life on the line, and demanded nothing in return. Clayton claimed he had done it on his own. For some reason, I felt compelled to do it. Exactly, she said lightly. That is the essence of its reality. His senses were jolted as he glanced down and noticed the grime on his hands and the ragged collar of his shirt. You want to marry a mechanic? No, but I want to marry the only man here who did not try to impress me. Behind them, the lights from the terminal glowed in the evening dusk. A few eager eyes stared through the glass murmurs, spreading like wildfire. Phones were undoubtedly filming, but Delaney did not care. For the first time in years, she was not performing, she was merely being. Clayton finally broke the stillness. You are serious? As a heart attack. He watched her for a moment, not the clothes, not the title, but the person. After that, remove your shoes. Delaney blinked. Excuse me, putting off your shoes is a sign of seriousness. Follow me as I stroll. Just the two of them standing on equal footing for 5 minutes. No titles, no headlines. For an instant she paused. The next step was for her to stand on one foot while she kicked off her heels one by one. Sienna Lockwood trailed a mechanic into sunset while barefoot on heated concrete. Silent employees' shadows trailed after them as they walked past the plane. She refrained from inquiring about their destination. Step after step, she simply matched his pace. Old hangars looked like forgotten giants on the outskirts of the airstrip as Clayton took her there. He motioned for her to come inside as he pried open a corroded door. Unexpectedly, she found herself within. An old man who resembled Clayton, only older, and with a wide smile stood behind a small boy in overalls, and the walls were covered with old photographs, planes and mechanics. There were no machines or engines, just a small folding table and a worn chair, saying quietly, "My father built his life fixing engines." Clayton said, "I beheld him restoring aircraft that others had written off as hopeless. I was given this hangar when he passed away. I turned off the lights because, well, dreams don't need electricity. Grit is what keeps them going." Delaney slowly spun around, soaking it all in. "According to Clayton, every man you've met so far has been interested in your empire. That is irrelevant to me. However, do not anticipate a pyrotechnic display if your offer is genuine. You can count on slapped knuckles, late-night fixes and lunches served on toolboxes." Delaney gradually grinned. That is absolutely right, not because he was enchanted, but because he finally believed her. Clayton smiled back. Even though the wind had kicked up outside the hangar, seemed strangely silent inside. The next morning, the old hangar's stained glass let sunlight stream in like liquid gold. Wearing Clayton's baggy flannel shirt and drinking coffee from a cracked cup, Delaney sat cross-legged on the concrete floor. Folded and nearly forgotten, her beautiful dress lay next to her. In that moment, she looked nothing like a billionaire, just a woman who had finally exhaled. Clayton, sitting across from her with a wrench in hand, talked without looking up. "You actually remained?" I said. "I would." Most individuals would have phoned a driver, found the nearest 5-star suite. I already know what 5 stars feel like. Delaney remarked, then added, with a small smile, "I was curious to know what the 5 a.m. that you were feeling." Softly, Clayton chuckled. Black coffee and chilly feet are the beginnings of something loud and greasy smelling. As if to make a faux toast, she lifted her cup, consequently, to shivers. On the other hand, nothing had stopped outside the hangar. A missing rich heiress's plane was grounded, security footage had leaked, and her name was trending. Word on the street was that she was lost. Her closest associates were the only ones who were unaware of her whereabouts. The wildness was intensified by the rumor a man in jeans covered with oil had been seen going across a tarmac with her bare feet. There was anarchy in the Carter Aviation boardroom once again. At the head of the table stood Trevor Whitmore, COO and Delaney's longtime advisor, looking red-faced. "This cannot be tolerated. Reporters are milling about, stockholders are going into a frenzy, and the board has called for urgent meetings." an executive of a younger age, leaned in. Could it be that she is making a love choice? Scoffing. Jason looked downcast. Carter is her name. Lovers don't pursue Carters. A lasting impression is left by them. Margaret Ashford, who was Delaney's godmother and a perceptive woman, remained silent at the meal. Delaney had grown up in castles, and she had witnessed her sob alone in them. Missed birthdays, staged laughs and practiced grins all came back to her. Delaney was now acting outside of his character, which had not happened in years. With an unusually shy smile, Margaret Ashford took cautious, measured sips of her tea. Clayton and Delaney returned to the airfield to continue working on an ancient Cessna that Delaney had been refurbishing for several years. Nothing about news stories or corporations, nothing but lubrication, small talk, and coy looks. Delaney delighted in the oil stains on her hands, which she had previously utilized for corporate autographs. The gate was approached by a black SUV in the late afternoon. Though Clayton tensed up, Delaney rose slowly to his feet. "Jason," she said, recognizing the driver. Dressed as if he were entering a courtroom rather than a hangar, he strode out with practiced composure. "It gives me relief to know that you are doing well, Miss Carter." As she wiped her hands on a rag, she spoke about, "Jason, why are you in this place? All eyes are on you now. The plane you were on failed to take off. A media frenzy has ensued. I will accompany you as you return to your everyday life." She grinned courteously. "Your interpretation is what you mean?" Clayton's gaze briefly shifted to Jason's. "Identify him," fearlessly. Clayton advanced. "The man who prevented her jet from exploding is the only one." A stiff, fake laugh from Jason's lips. "See, what gives you the right to stand with her?" Then calmly, yet sharply, Delaney's voice dipped. "Who I stand beside does not depend on their credentials." Jason took a few steps back. "Delaney, there are investors keeping tabs on you. You have to maintain certain facades. Your name is Carter." "No," she replied as she cautiously approached him. "This is Delaney. Not only that, but I'm actually going to start acting like it." Jason loosened his jaw and then tightened it again. Turning to Clayton, Delaney spoke, "I invite you to accompany me in what location?" In order to prove to the world that the one person who recognized me before the brand was not ashamed of me. Clayton was a bit hesitant before finally nodding. She extended her hand toward his. It was taken by Clayton. This time, the hangar's doors swung open wide. Outside, the cameras were clicking like fireworks. Yet unadorned with false jewelry or cosmetics, Sienna Lockwood strode ahead, her oil-stained hands intertwined with the mechanics, and everyone on Earth waited. Stepping out into the intense afternoon sun, the world beyond the hangar appeared to be a whole different reality. Acquiring cameras and shouting inquiries, reporters hurried forward, yet Delaney showed no signs of fear. Their opinions and remarks meant nothing to her. At this very moment, nothing else was significant save the man by her side, the one who had recognized her genuine identity. Not the fortune or the lineage, but the hidden individual. Jason was already observing from a distance in his automobile. His expression was one of bewilderment and annoyance as he tapped angrily on the steering wheel. Delaney had never before shown him such fearlessness in pursuing her own life goals. Everything that had been built up over the years, including the characters' board meetings and investment reports, had fallen apart in an instant. Jason had forewarned Delaney about this recklessness during their previous phone conversation. Tossing everything for a mechanic isn't an option. How does your future look? What will remain of you? His anxious texts went unanswered by Delaney. She had anticipated his response. She was aware of his intense fear of her escaping. She received a revelation that would alter the course of events, saving the empire they had created together from certain doom. All her life she had worked toward a future that she had never desired. Quit acting. The moment has come. Standing at her side, Clayton's hands bore the marks of engine grease. Not only was he impoverished, he also lacked influential contacts and an eye-catching vehicle. But Delaney understood at that same second that it had all been for naught. Clayton had always been genuine, and that was what was important. Her fame and fortune were never reasons he desired her. All he wanted was her. Despite the media hysteria, Delaney felt an unusual calmness wash over her as they made their way to the waiting plane. At that one moment, she felt more alive than at any other time in her life. Unlike before this time, she was acting on her own desires and not in response to the opinions of others. "Can you confirm this for me?" As they drew near the airplane, Clayton questioned in a voice just above a whisper. Her grin was gentle and sincere. "Nothing in my life has ever made me more certain than now." As the world outside persisted in its tumultuous mayhem, the jet shimmered in the sunlight. The world had lost its significance for Delaney. The events of the future, the decisions she would make, were her only concerns. As they stepped onto the plane, the doors slammed shut behind them. Everyone else, investors, media, and the general public, would have to be patient. Delaney was finally making a choice about her future. The title bestowed upon her at birth did not bind her. Now she could do anything she wanted. She bid farewell to the hangar and her previous life as the jet rose into the sky. Clayton was the object of Delaney's gaze. His expression was serene, but his eyes betrayed the kindness and understanding she had been seeking her entire life. "How can I get there?" The pilot's voice cracked over the intercom as he inquired. Delaney paused to consider. "Wherever life takes us," she declared, her voice unwavering and brimming with a spirit of liberation. Upon meeting her gaze, Clayton conveyed his message. There was more to this than meets the eye. It was a fresh start. It was the first step on the road to the most incredible experience they had ever dreamed of. Like the future, the horizon was enormous and boundless as it extended out in front of them. As the plane resumed its climb into the sky, Delaney realized she had chosen wisely. She did it for the first time without seeking validation from others, even though they may never comprehend her motivation. Her own happiness was something she had discovered, and it was far more valuable. And that was more valuable than any amount of gold on earth.